Hello friends, welcome to Unacademy. So here we are as we promised with the first lecture of strength of material. So I will be taking your strength of material completely in this YouTube channel. Okay, so you can use my referral also for getting the subscription. More the students going to refer, the more the encouragement we'll be having. So you know about me, myself Abhishek Bhartia sir, right? We have already discussed in the last uh, video. Okay, so I will be taking your strength of material from now on. Okay, so let's start then. Okay, so see, if I talk about strength of material, then there are few chapters that are very important that you should understand in this strength of material. So moving with the first chapter, first I will give you the name of the different chapter that we need to study in this strength of material. The first one is introduction. The first one is introduction. Okay. The second, we are going to about study about stress. Okay, that stress is simple stress. Third, we are going to study about SFD and BMD. Okay. Fourth, we are going to about study about principal stress, which you know about, which you say about as complex stress, that I'm saying as principal stress. Okay, and stress transformation. Stress transformation. Okay. Next, fifth, we are going to study about, after the principal stress, we study about bending. After the bending, we study about shear stress. Shear stress. Seventh, we are going to study about deflection. Okay. And eighth is theory of failure. Okay, so these are 8 basic chapters. If I say properly, the first 4 are the only basic chapters, next 4 are the application. Okay, if I talk about the ninth chapter, the ninth chapter will be your torsion. Torsion. 10th will be your pressure vessel. Pressure vessel. 11th will be column. Okay, and 12th will be your spring. Okay, so these are the basically chapters that are you need to study in the strength of material. So if I say about the weightage of this particular subject, so in GATE civil, this comes for around 4 to 5 marks. Okay, now don't consider the weightage that the weightage is low, so you need to study only for 4 to 5 months. No, don't look at this subject like this, because if you look at the strength of material, this subject is forming the base for your structure analysis, for your RCC, for your steel. Okay, so this subject has lot of importance and you should understand that. Okay, so if you look at the next, that is, if I say about ESE pre, that is ESE objective, if I say, so this particular objective paper consists of 10 to 15 questions, and that 10 to 15 questions account for 20 to 30 marks, because per question there is a weightage of 2 marks. Okay, next, if I look about ESE conventional, then ESE conventional, the weightage of this subject is 35 to 50 marks. Again, the weightage is very high. Okay, so, and this is about GATE and ESE. See here, we have already announced that we are going to study not for only GATE or ESE, but all the technical exams for the engineers, right, that comes in India. Okay, so we are going to see all. So if you take any paper, so this subject has an immense weightage. Okay, so if I talk about the basic, then you should understand that this four, that is first four, is forming the base for your strength of material. Okay, so if these 4 chapters are clear to you, you can solve n number of questions without any problem. Okay, so today our topic of discussion is introduction. We are going to start with the introduction. Okay, we are going to start with the introduction. So first of all, you should understand why we study the strength of material. What type of body we study the strength of material. Okay, first of all, we don't study the strength of material for fluid, right? Fluid means water or gas, that is liquid or gas, right? So we don't study the strength of material for fluid, right? We study the strength of matter for solid mechanics, right? We study the solid, but not all the solid are analyzed in the strength of material, right? Not all the solid are analyzed in the strength of material. Okay, so this solid mechanics is divided into 2 parts. This solid mechanics is divided into 2 parts. Okay, the first part we say as rigid body analysis. The first part we are saying as rigid body analysis, and the second part that we are going to study is deformable body. Deformable body analysis. Deformable body analysis. Okay, the first part that we are saying is rigid body, and the second part that we are saying as deformable body. So let me tell you what is the basic difference between the two body. Okay, so if I talk about the rigid body analysis, then one thing that you should be clear, the name itself indicate that it is a rigid body. So what does it imply? That suppose I am taking a body, okay, I'm taking a body and saying that it is a rigid. So how it can be rigid? If there are 2 points within the body, suppose the 2 points are A and B, and the distance between the 2 points is L. Okay, right now no external load is applied to the body. Okay, no external load is applied to the body. Now I'm giving a load, external load to the body, due to which the distance between the point, if the distance between the point, that is A dash B dash, it becomes L, then if I say L dash, then this L dash must be equal to L if the body is considered to be rigid. That means a body is said to be rigid if the distance between the 2 points, before and after the application of the load, if it remains constant, then the body is considered to be rigid body. What is rigid body? What is rigid body? See, we are going to study very properly, right? Very slowly. So what I'm saying, what is a rigid body? That if the distance between 2 points within the body before and after the application of the load remains constant, then body is said to be rigid body. Is it clear? Body is said to be rigid body. Okay, So what is deformable body? So what is deformable body? See, if I take a body, I'm saying that it's a deformable body. Then what do you mean by this? So I'm taking 2 points within the body, A and B, and the distance between 2 points is L. I haven't applied any load till now. Now I'm going to apply an external load of P, due to which the 2 points displaced, A dash, B dash, and the distance between the 2 points is L1. Now, if the body is deformable, then L1 will not be equal to L. Then L1 will not be equal to L. So such a body is referred as deformable body. So what is deformable body? What is deformable body? What is deformable body? Say, if the distance between 2 points before and after the application of load changes, then body is said to be deformable body. Then the body is said to be deformable body. Is it clear? Right. Now, that is the thing that we are taught, that what is the difference between the rigid body and deformable body. First of all, you should understand both are solid, right? Now, for the rigid body, we study the rigid body in the subject that is engineering mechanics. Okay, so the study of rigid body is in engineering mechanics. Okay, so rigid body analysis in engineering mechanics, and the study of deformable body is in the strength of material. Okay, so what is strength of material? What is strength of material? Strength of material. What is strength of material? What can we say? That branch of engineering which deals with study of what? Deformable body. Is it clear? Right. And what is engineering mechanics? What is engineering mechanics? It is a branch of engineering which deals with study of rigid body. Right. So I hope you understood the basic difference between the rigid body and deformable body, and what type of body you are going to study in the strength of material, right? So first thing that you should be very clear that your strength of material is studied only for deformable body. Is it clear? Okay. Now just have a look. If you understood, please give a thumbs up for this. If you understood, please give a thumbs up for this. Right? Give a thumbs up sign so that I understand that you have understood. Okay. See then. Now, if I talk about deformable body, specific, then the deformable body can be classified into 3 parts. See, most of the people know about only 2 parts, right? Let's see the 3 parts, right? So deformable body is classified into 3 parts, that is elastic body, plastic body, or viscoelastic or viscoplastic body. Okay, So most of you haven't heard about this viscoelastic or viscoplastic body, right? I will explain that, but first of all, let me complete with the elastic or plastic body. So what we say about the elastic body, that a body is said to be elastic when, if I apply a load, we are talking about the deformed body, right? So deformation will be there. So if I'm applying a load to a deformable body, it get deformed, right? It get deformed. But after some time, if I remove the load, then it, if the material regains its original position, then the body is said to be elastic body. Yes or no? Yes or no? See, if I say there is a body, this is at t is equal to 0, this is at t is equal to 0, which I haven't applied any load till now. Okay, now I apply a load P, due to which some deformation I can observe till time t. Now if I remove the load, if the material regains its original position, after removing the load, then we say that the body is elastic body. Okay, so what is plastic body? Suppose I'm taking a material, okay, I am applying a load P to this plastic body, due to which it undergoes certain deformation, right? Now after removing the load, after some time t, if it does not regain its original position, after removing the load, then we say that the body is a plastic body. Is it clear? The body is a plastic body. Okay, so that is the basic difference between the elastic and plastic body. When we say elastic body, what I'm saying that elastic body regains its original dimension or original shape after removal of the load, Is it clear? Whereas if I take a plastic body, it does not regain. Okay, so I'm writing as a plastic body does not regains its original shape after removal of load. Okay, there is a permanent set in the plastic body. Is it clear? Now next is viscoelastic or viscoplastic bodies. So try to understand, elastic and plastic indicate the nature. Okay, but what does the visco term indicate? So see here, visco means high deformation. So there is a high deformation in the body. There is a very high deformation in the body. Okay, and if I say viscoelastic, then in the viscoelastic body the deformation will be very high, but if I remove the load, the matter will regain its original shape and size. But if I talk about viscoplastic body, there will be high deformation, but upon the removal of the load, the matter will not be able to regain its original shape. Is it clear? Okay, so that is the meaning of visco. Now if I take an example of this visco, try to understand the example. So for example, I'm taking iron, Fe, which is a chemical symbol. So for iron, there is a standard melting point, and that melting point is 1539 degrees centigrade. Yes. Okay. So if the surrounding temperature of iron, is less than melting point by 2, surrounding temperature of the iron is less than melting point by 2, then the material will behave as elastic. The material will behave as elastic. Else, if the temperature is more than melting point by 2, it is going to behave as a viscoelastic body. It is going to behave as a viscoelastic body. That means same material can behave as a elastic or viscoelastic or plastic or viscoplastic depending on the surrounding temperature, right? Okay, so any problem, please ask. Any problem, please ask. If you understood, please give a thumbs up. If you understood, please give a thumbs up. Okay, please ask. Any problem you are having this? Okay then. Okay, so we understood that deformability can be classified into elastic, plastic, or viscoelastic or viscoplastic. Now we have to study about elastic deformable body. We have to study about elastic deformable body. Okay, now this elastic deformable body is further classified into two parts. It's further classified into two parts. The first part is linearly elastic body. Linearly elastic body. And the second part is non-linearly elastic body. Non-linearly elastic body. So I want the basic difference between these two, that is linearly elastic and non-linearly elastic. So the basic difference lies in the understanding of Hooke's law. So what is Hooke's law? What is Hooke's law? Mention in the comment, what is Hooke's law? Yes. So most of you are saying that stress is directly proportional to strain. Is it the complete definition of the Hooke's law? Is it the complete definition of the Hooke's law? No, it's not the complete definition. Okay, within proportionality limit. No. Or yes. Or within elastic limit. Say. Okay, so I mentioned it within proportionality limit, not elastic limit, within proportionality limit, stress is directly proportional to strain, right? That is your Hooke's law. So if I say a linearly elastic body, so a linearly elastic body follows Hooke's law. A linearly elastic body follows Hooke's law, and a non-linear elastic body do not obey Hooke's law. Do not obey Hooke's law. For example, if I draw the stress strain curve, for mild steel, so the curve look like this. Okay, so there is a proportionality limit in this curve, right? So till this proportionality limit here, stress is directly proportional to strain. That means this curve is linear, that is 1 degree. That's why we are saying linearly elastic body. Is it clear? Right. So that is an example of linearly elastic body. What is the example of non-linear elastic body? What is the example of non-linear elastic body? Yes, rubber. Rubber is a non-linear elastic body. So if I draw the curve of the rubber, it will look like this, right? It doesn't have any proportionality limit. Here, the stress is not directly proportional to strain. Okay, is it clear? Stress is not directly proportional to strain. So the first is the example for mild steel. The second is the example for rubber. The second is the example for rubber. Okay. So from here I want to conclude. From here I want to conclude. Conclude क्या है? What is the conclusion? That you need to study about linearly elastic deformable body. So strength of material is studied for linearly elastic deformable body. Linearly elastic deformable body. Is it clear? We need to study for linearly elastic deformable body. So each term should be very clear to you all, right? Each term should be very clear to you all. Okay then. Any doubt, please ask. Or else put the thumbs up. Put the thumbs up sign. Right? If you understood. Okay then. Let's move to the next part. That is, if I take a deformable body, then this deformable body is further classified into two parts, right? Corresponding to the failure. I'm talking about the failure of the deformable body. So a deformable body can fail in two manners. The failure can be either in yielding, okay, or the failure can be either in fracture. So there are two modes of failure in the deformable body. So one I am saying as yielding, and second I am saying as fracture. Okay, so let's look at both the terms one by one. So yielding, what do you mean yielding? Yielding means if I take a body, so before the failure, the body will develop cracks. So that is yielding. Okay. But if I take the fracture, then a body will be having fracture when it fails suddenly without the indication of failure. That means if the cracks are developed, then it is giving the indication that it is going to fail. But in the fracture, it is going to fail suddenly without giving any indication, right? So in the yielding, or we say yield failure, cracks are developed before getting actually failed, giving the indication of failure. Is it clear? Whereas if I take about fracture, so in fracture, if I say, so no cracks are developed. Okay, no cracks are developed. Material fails suddenly. Without giving any indication. Without giving any indication. No indication is given, right? The matter is going to fail suddenly. Okay, is it clear? Right. So that happens in the fracture. Okay. So tell me one thing. As a design engineer, you should prefer which one? Yielding or fracture? If you can design for the failure, you want which failure to occur? Yielding or fracture? Yes? Yes? Obviously, you want to design for yielding. Okay. So as a design engineer, you prefer yielding failure rather than fracture, because if you design for fracture, it may lead to the loss of life and property. Okay. But what happens that in the material having yield failure does not have sufficient strength, right? So if I require the strength, I design for fracture, but we give high factor of safety so that the required working load can be given to the structure. Is it clear? So that is your failure type of the deformable body. Okay, now one more thing. This yield failure generally found in the brittle material. Sorry, yield failure is generally found in the ductile material, and this fracture is generally found in the brittle material. This fracture is generally found in the brittle material. So to understand about this ductile material and brittle material, you already studied previously what is ductile material, what is brittle material. So kindly comment what do you know about the ductility, ductile, and what do you know brittle. Please comment. Yes. What is ductile? What is brittle? What is ductile? What is brittle? Okay. See, we are going to understand this with term ductility and brittleness. Ductility and brittleness. Okay. So we are going to understand with the ductility and brittleness. So what do you mean by ductility? What do you mean by ductility? Ductility, if I say, it's a property of a ductile material by the virtue of which it can be elongated into thin wires. If you stretch this, it will become a form of a wire, right? So what is ductility? Property by virtue of which it can be drawn into thin wires. Is it clear? Whereas what is brittleness? If I say brittleness, then can I say that is a lack of ductility, or we generally used to say that the matter will be broken into pieces if extended for the long? Yes or no? So we can just write this as lack of ductility is brittleness. Lack of ductility is brittleness. Is it clear? Okay. Now I'm going to give you few results of the ductility. That is, see, any material is subjected to three type of load, right? If I say generally two type of load, one is a normal, other is a shear, and the normal consists of two component. One is a tension, other is compression, right? So a ductile material is strongest in compression, so it has the highest compressive strength, right? Compressive is a normal, so for normal we are denoting as sigma. For since it is ultimate, because we are talking about the maximum, so I'm writing U, and C is for compression, right? What I'm saying, what is this sigma? This is for normal stress. Is it clear? For you, what I'm saying, this is ultimate. And what is C? This is compression. Is it clear? So this is highest, and thereafter this is greater than sigma ultimate tension, that is the ultimate compressive strength of the ductile material is greater than the ultimate tensile strength, and this is greater than ultimate shear strength, right? So for shear we denote by tau. For shear we denote by tau. This is for shear and U is for ultimate, that you understand. Okay, so tau is representing the shear. So ductile matter is the strongest in compression, mediocre in tension, and weakest in shear. Okay, so since the material is weak in shear, you can see that since the material is weak in shear, okay, so it fails on a plane subjected to maximum shear, because anything will fail at a plane at which it is the weakest, and the plane at which the shear is maximum, the ductile matter is going to fail at that particular plane. So this result will be using when we study the theory of failure. Okay, next, what is brittleness then? What is the property of the brittleness? So again, a brittle material is strongest in compression. It is mediocre in shear. And weak in tension. So again, if I say this, if I look at this, then we can say that since the material is weak in tension, it fails on a plane subjected to maximum tensile stress. Is it clear? Right. So that is the two part that we studied about. One is the property and other is the what are the different strength carrying capacity. Okay. Third point that we are going to study is that suppose two material is given to you and you need to predict which is the more brittle or which is the more ductile. So see, if you are given the two material, then for the same loading condition, the material subjected to maximum deformation will be more ductile. That means higher the ultimate strain, because what we are saying, it is a property by which it can deform into thin wires. So the more it is going to stretch, the more the ductile it will be. Is it clear? So higher the ultimate strain, more the material will be ductile. More the material will be ductile. Is it clear? Right. And what about the next one? Here we are saying the strength is more, right? So if in the brittle matter the strength is more, then greater the load carrying capacity before failure, greater the ultimate strength of the material before failure, so more it will be brittle. So greater the ultimate strength of the material, more it will be brittle. Right. So let us understand this with example. Suppose I'm drawing the stress strain curve. Okay, and in this stress strain curve, I'm drawing two curves. I'm drawing two curve. Okay. One is for the material A and other is for the material B. Okay. So for the material A, this is epsilon failure A and this is the ultimate sigma ultimate A. For B, this is sigma ultimate B and this is epsilon failure B. So which is more ductile, which is more brittle? Try to understand. Can I say that B is more ductile, more ductile than A? Can I say this? That B is more ductile than A. Why? Because the ultimate strain in B is more than ultimate strain in A. Yes or no? Right. So we say that B is more ductile. But if I look at this, then A is having the more ultimate strength. That means A is more brittle than B. Is it clear? So we write this. Why this I'm writing? Because sigma ultimate A is greater than sigma ultimate B, which you can see from the curve also. Right? So this is the way we classify the difference between the ductility and brittleness and the way we compare the results of the ductility and brittleness. Is it clear? Okay. So I hope you understood this part about the ductility and brittleness. Ductility and brittleness. Yes, you understood? I hope you are understanding this. Right? So please give a thumbs up. If you understood, please give a thumbs up. You understood? Okay. Okay. Okay then. Let us look at the next part, that is assumptions. Assumptions in the strength of material. Assumptions in the strength of material. What are the various assumptions that you can take in the strength of material? Okay. So see here, before starting this assumption, I would let you understand the importance of this assumption. Okay. See, saying it very clearly that these assumptions are very important to understand if you want to understand the subject very properly. And in the ESE objective, per year 1 to 2 question or 3 to 4 question used to come from these assumptions, right? I'm not talking about the strength of matter, but for all the subjects, right? They used to ask like this: A, B, C, D are correct, A, B are correct, A, B, C, D are correct. So if to answer such type of question, you should know all the assumptions, and these assumptions are important regarding you should be able to solve all the questions of the strength of material. Okay. So the first of all, the first assumption that you are going to take is, for any solid body is given to you, you need to consider the body as deformable. You need to consider the body as deformable, right? So the body is deformable and continuous. Deformable and continuous. So deformable you understood. Continuous means like you can see the surface at the back of me, right? What is this? This is a continuous surface, right? We are pretending it is continuous because the plaster is there. But if you look at the inside, there will be the cracks or the voids in bit, right? So we are considering that it is a deformable and continuous. Okay. The second we are going to say is the body is homogeneous and isotropic. So for me, what is important for you all is should understand each and every word I'm saying, right? Don't just mug up. So what do you mean homogeneous? What is homogeneous? Don't say, sir, same mixture, same composition throughout the matter is homogeneous. That is not solid mechanics. That's not strength of material. That is the part of your chemistry, right? So what is homogeneous? Okay, so try to understand. If I'm taking a body, right? And in the body, I'm taking few points within it. I'm taking few points within it. So what is the definition of homogeneous? Say that if the elastic property, because we are talking about the elastic body, right? So if the elastic property in one particular direction, elastic body, the elastic property in one particular direction at all the points within the body, are same, then the material is said to be homogeneous, right? That means if I take this horizontal direction, it has the property of E, then at all the points the property should be E. Is it clear? Then the matter is said to be homogeneous. Okay, now suppose if I take a perpendicular direction, if I say the property is E1, then if the matter is homogeneous, then at all the other points within the body, the property will be E1, right? So this is homogeneous. Right? So what I'm saying about the homogeneous, that if the elastic properties at all the points within the body in one particular direction is same, then the material is homogeneous. Right? Okay, so that is about homogeneous. Now the next is isotropic. So see here, if I'm taking a body and I'm saying that this is isotropic. So what is isotropic? Try to understand. Isotropic says that at any point within the body, if the elastic property in all the direction is same, okay, at a point, then the matter is said to be isotropic. That means if I take a point within the body, then at this particular point, if I look at one direction and if the property is E1, then in all the direction the property will be E1. Okay, so this is the definition of isotropic. Is it clear? But it doesn't say that if I take any other point, then the property should be E1 only. Okay, but if I say at this point in one direction the property is E2, then in all the direction property will be E2. It not necessarily be E1. It is not necessarily be E1. Okay, so this is, I'm saying, as isotropic. So what is isotropic? Just let me write what I'm saying, that if the elastic property in all the direction at a point within the body, remains same, then the material is said to be said to be isotropic, then the matter is said to be isotropic. Is it clear? Then the matter is said to be isotropic. Okay. So I hope you understood me on homogeneous and isotropic. If I say homogeneous, then homogeneous say that in one particular direction at all the points, if the elastic property is same, then the matter is homogeneous. But if we say the isotropic, then in all the direction at a point, if the elastic property is same, then we say it as isotropic. Now, we need to say both homogeneous and isotropic. We need to take both, that is homogeneous and isotropic. So, what is the combination of homogeneous and isotropic? See, if I take a body and I'm saying that it's a homogeneous and isotropic, so I'm taking a point 1, 2, 3. Let us take 3 points only. First of all, homogeneous. So homogeneous can be there if in one particular direction at all the point the property is same. So I'm saying as, let us say the property is E. Now the matter should be isotropic also. So if it has to be isotropic, then in all the direction at a point the property should be same. Okay. So at the first point, if you look, if I talk in all the direction, if it is isotropic, the property should be E. The property should be E. Similarly, at the second point also, if it is isotropic, the property should be E. Similarly, at the next point also, in all the direction, the property should be E. So what you understood when I'm saying the material is, when the material is homogeneous and isotropic. What do you understand about this? When I say that the matter is homogeneous and isotropic, that at any point within the body, in any of the direction, the material elastic property will remain constant. Then we say that the material is homogeneous and isotropic. Is it clear? What I am saying, that if the elastic property in all the direction at any point within the body remains same, then material is homogeneous and isotropic. Is it clear? Then the matter is homogeneous and isotropic. Is it clear? So that is about homogeneous and isotropic. Now, two more type of material you should understand. One is anisotropic. Other is orthotropic. One I am saying as anisotropic and other I am saying as orthotropic. So what is anisotropic? See here, if I separate the word, I can see that an is there and isotropic is there. So any term which has a or an in the front indicate negation, right? So an is isotropic means the elastic property at any point in all the directions are not same. So if I take a body, I'm saying it's anisotropic. If I take any point within the body, then and all the direction, the elastic property will be different. Is it clear? So that is the meaning of anisotropic. Next, if I take as orthotropic, so what do we orthotrop? Perpendicular direction, right? So obviously here also we are talking about the perpendicular direction. So if I take a body, and at any point we are taking three mutually perpendicular direction like x, y, z, right? So in a three perpendicular direction, if the elastic property are not same, are different, then the matter is said to be orthotropic. Is it clear? So we have studied about homogeneous, isotropic, homogeneous and isotropic, anisotropic, orthotropic, right? So these are the different properties that you should understand, and any problem you should ask, right? You don't have any problem, and give the thumbs up, right? So any problem, any comment, please give it in the comment box. Any comment, please give it in the comment box. Okay, so I hope you understood, right? Okay then, good. So that was your second assumption. Moving to the third assumption. What does the third assumption say? What does the third assumption say? Third assumption say that we should consider only the surface forces. We should consider only the consider only surface force and self weight. Self weight means body weight. Self weight or dead load, which we, because self weight we denote as dead load. Self weight or dead load of the member is neglected. Okay, so what do I mean by this? Suppose a bar is there. Bar is any member subjected to the axial loading, right? So a bar is there. This bar is subjected to the axial load of P, that is acting on the surface, and it has a weight of mg. Okay, so what does the assumption say? That you should consider the surface force, you should neglect the self weight or dead load of the structure. Okay, now you can use this dead load or self weight if it is mentioned in the question that you need to find the deformation, or you need to consider the self weight for finding any particular unknown, right? So you can use it unless it is mentioned in the question. Okay, if it is mentioned in the question, you can use it. If it's not mentioned, you can't. Is it clear? Okay, so that is your third assumption. Moving to the fourth assumption. Fourth assumption is engineering stress and strain are considered, whereas true stress and strain are neglected. Now, what do you mean by this engineering stress and true stress? Let me clear you. See, suppose I'm taking a bar. Okay, this bar has an initial area of A, right? This is A initial area. This is at T is equal to 0. Okay, I've applied the load of P at T is equal to 0, due to which I can see few deformation. And due to the deformation, the area, the cross section area changed to A dash at any time T. A dash at any time T is equal to T. Okay, so what is stress? Nothing but load upon area. So if we talk about engineering stress, it is load upon initial area. So what is load? That is P. What is initial area? That is A, right? And what is true stress? True stress is nothing but load upon instantaneous area. So load is P and the instantaneous area is A dash. So what is saying in the assumption that you need to consider this engineering stress and you'll be neglecting this true stress. Why so? Why so? See, at any instant of time, it is not possible to find what is the change in the area and get the exact area, right? But we can estimate the initial area and we can determine the stress. That's why in the analysis, we consider only the engineering stress. Okay. So for civil engineer, this is enough. For mechanical, they used to study in this same in the machine design. Okay. Now, fifth one is superposition principle. Superposition principle is valid because Hooke's law is valid. Hooke's law is valid. Now, I already told you what is Hooke's law. Hooke's law is within the proportionality limit, stress is directly proportional to strain. So this law clearly indicates that strength of matter is applicable when the load is within the proportionality limit. Okay. So what is this superposition principle now? What is this superposition principle? See, what does it say? That if the load is within the proportionality limit and the stress function is linearly proportional to the load applied. Now, what is this stress function? It's nothing but your stress, like slope, deflection, angle of twist, etc. All these are stress function. Okay. So if it varies linearly with the load applied, then the effect of multiple loading at a point is same as the effect of individual loading. So what I'm saying, that try to understand. I'm saying superposition principle. What is the superposition principle? See, suppose a bar is there and on this bar I have applied a load of P. The length of the bar is, let us say, L, and due to the load it deforms to delta 1. Okay, deformed by delta 1. I remove the load is within the proportionality limit, it regains its original position. Okay, now let's say the load that applied is P1. Now on the same bar which was allowed to go back to its original position, if I apply the load of P2, then it deforms by delta 2. It deforms by delta 2. Okay, now again the load is within the proportionality limit. So if I remove the load, it will regain its original position. Okay, now on the same bar, if I apply the load of P1 plus P2 such that P1 plus P2 is within the proportionality limit, then this particular member will subjected to deformation of delta. So what does the superposition principle say? That the effect of multiple loading is same as summation of effect of individual loading. So we are talking about the effect. What is the effect? That is delta, right? So what is say that the effect of multiple loading same as summation of effect of individual loading. Is it clear? So that is superposition principle. Got it? We'll deal about this in the further chapters also. Okay, so that is the principle. Now tell me, I'm talking about one IAS question, IAS 2006 question. What is this IAS 2006 question? See, it is given that a P delta curve is there, and this is drawn. Okay, one load P is given here, that is P1. Corresponding deflection is delta 1. Another load P is acting here. Corresponding deflection is given as delta 2. Okay, so it is asked that if load of P1 plus P2 is applied, load of P1 plus P2 is applied, then the deflection is, your options are delta 1 plus delta 2, B delta 1, C delta 2, or D cannot be determined. Come on, vote fast. Give the voting. What should be the answer? How many of you are in favor in delta 1 plus delta 2? A, option A. Those are option, click A. Those are option of A, please click A. Okay. How many of you with B delta 1? Okay. How many with C delta 2? And how many of you with that cannot be determined? D. Again, A is delta 1 plus delta 2, B delta 1, C delta 2, D cannot be determined. Okay, so got the result. Now see, this load P1 may or may not be within the proportionality limit, that I cannot say with this diagram, but I am quite sure that P2 is not within the proportionality limit. So if P2 is not within the proportionality limit, I cannot apply the Hooke's law. And if I cannot apply the Hooke's law, I cannot say whether it's a delta 1 plus delta 2 or delta 1 or delta 2. We say that it is cannot be determined. Is it clear? Okay. So that is your fifth assumption. Now, moving to the sixth assumption. Sixth assumption say that material is prismatic. Material is prismatic. So what do you mean prismatic? See, if I take this pen, look at this part. So if I cut any section, okay, if I cut any section in this part, the section will have the same shape and size. Yes or no? So such a material is said as prismatic. Okay. You will study about the non-prismatic section also, but there we'll understand how we are going to analyze. Okay. So prismatic means uniform cross section throughout the length. So that is when your material is prismatic. Is it clear? Seventh, no residual stress. Now what is residual stress? Residual means what? Leftover, right? So I'm talking about there's no residual. That means before the actual load, you haven't applied any load in the past, right? That means at the time of the loading, we'll assume that there is no stress left in the particular structure. Whatever load that you are going to apply, that is going to create the stress in the structure. Is it clear? So that is the meaning of no residual stress, right? So these are the seven assumptions. That we are taking in the strength of material. Okay. So any problem, please ask. Right? So what I'm saying first, the matter is continuous and deformable, right? Deformable and continuous means, deformable I'm saying, what is the definition of deformable? That the 2 points within the body, if the distance changes before and after the application of the load, that is the deformable body. Continuous, uniform, right? Homogeneous, at any point or at all the points within the body in one particular direction. If the material elastic property is same, we say the body is homogeneous. Okay. Isotropic, at one point in all the direction, the material is having the same property. Homogeneous and isotropic, in all the direction, at any point, the material elastic property is same. Okay. Next is anisotropic. What we understood? That in all the direction at a point, the property are different. Orthotropic, in three mutually perpendicular direction, the elastic properties are different at a point within the body, right? Next, we have seen that we will consider only the surface force. Surface force means the force that is acting at the surface, that is the surface force, right? And the dead load or cell weight of the member will be neglected. Okay. Next, we are talking about the engineering stress and true stress. Engineering stress is what? The stress that is we considering the initial area for determining the engineering stress. Whereas true stress, we are considering instantaneous area. That means the area that is acting at the instant. So we are neglecting the true. We are considering the engineering stress. Superposition principle clearly said that it will follow the Hooke's law, right? Okay, but provided the obviously the Hooke's law clearly say that the load should be within the proportionality limit, right? Next, the matter should be prismatic and there should be no residual stress. Okay, so that's the part of the assumption. One more thing that I'm going to discuss today will be factor of safety. Factor of safety. So what is factor of safety? What is factor of safety? See, what is this factor of safety? Try to understand. These assumptions that we're taking for the analysis does not exist practically. Yes, it does not exist practically. You are doing this for your simplicity, for your analysis. Okay, but in the field, these assumptions are not valid. This does not exist in practical. So for them, we need to apply the safety. We need to apply a factor that is referred as factor of safety. Is it clear? So for example, if I take a ductile material, right? So a ductile material, for example, mild steel, if I'm taking, it's a ductile material. So a mild steel will first yield, then cracks will develop, and finally it will fail at the end point, right? So this is the point of lower yield strength, at which the failure, or better to say, cracks start to develop. Obviously, so we will design for the strength at which the failure cannot be seen. Yes or no? So here comes factor of safety, right? So obviously, whatever may be the capacity of failure, we cannot load the particular structure at its full capacity because we have taken the assumptions, and for that we are taking the factor of safety, right? So what is factor of safety? It is defined as, for the ductile material, lower yield strength upon working stress. Whatever the stress that is due to the working load, that is a working stress, and always for the design, the working stress should be less than the strength of the material at which the failure can be seen. Okay, so what conclusion you can draw? You can draw that factor of safety will always be greater than 1. Factor of safety will always be greater than 1. Is it clear? Okay. Next, if I see for the brittle material, then in the brittle material, there is ultimate failure. No indication of cracks and all. So this point is ultimate strength. Obviously, so when we are going to apply the load, we'll never want this ultimate strength to get developed, right? So we apply the factor of safety, and that is defined as ultimate strength upon working stress. Ultimate strength upon working stress. Is it clear? So again, obviously, if I say the factor of safety is greater than 1, then the working stress will be what? Less than the ultimate strength of the material. Is it clear? So if I say in industries, if I look in the industries, then in the industries, the factor of safety lies in the range of 1.6 to 4. See, I'm saying a range. Why? See, I'm saying a range. Why? Why I'm saying that the factor of safety lies in the range of 1.6 to 4 and not in any other range? Why? Can anyone answer? Please comment. Yes. Why I'm saying that the factor of safety lies in a particular range and not any other thing? What happen if the factor of safety lies below this range or above this range? What the problem we are going to see? What the problem we are going to see? Come on, comment. Come on, comment. Yes. Come on. Okay, see then. See, if the factor of safety is less than 1.6, that means we are going to apply, if I look at the definition, strength upon stress. Stress is due to working. So, suppose I'm taking the material constant, then strength will remain constant. So, if I'm reducing the factor of safety, then I am increasing the working load on the structure, right? So, suppose what will happen, suddenly the load increases, then stress may increase up to a considerable value and the durability of the structure will reduce, right? And if the durability is reduced, then your structure may fail. Yes or no? So obviously the factor of safety cannot be less than the 1.6 because for the factories, for the industries, because it may lead to the failure. It may lead to the failure because the structure will not be durable. Okay. Now next, if I say the factor of safety is more than 4, the factor of safety is more than 4, what will happen? So see, I'm seeing strength upon stress. If I need to increase the factor of safety, I need to increase the stress. Look here. Look here. I'm saying that I need to increase the factor of safety. So keeping the stress constant, to increase the factor of safety, strength need to increase. And if I need to increase the strength, I need to use the better quality material. I need to use better quality material for the strength to improve, to increase the factor of safety. Is it clear? Got the point? Or what we can do, I want to make the strength as constant. Okay, so I want to make the strength as constant. I need to decrease the stress, and in order to decrease the stress, if I say the stress is load upon area, you cannot decrease the load. Or so what you need to do, because this is a working load, you cannot decrease the load because that is a design load, right? So what you have to do, you need to increase the area, that is cross section area. And if you increase the cross section area, you need to apply better quality, better, or that's quality of material that you have taken for the strength. You need to deposit it more on the surface. The more the material is going to deposit on the surface, the more the cost will be involved and the design will become uneconomical. So if 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 factor of safety is less than 1.6, then I'm talking especially for industries, and same the result or same explanation can be given for any other part also in for factor of safety, right? So if factor of safety is less than 1.6, we say that structure will not be durable. Structure will not be durable, right? And if factor of safety is greater than 4 for industries, then the structure will be uneconomical because either higher quality material will be used, either higher quality material will be used, or more amount of lower quality material will be deposited at the surface. Is it clear? I hope you understood this, right? So that is the importance of factor of safety, right? To indicate what should be the working stress that we should be making the beam to resist, so that the structure do not fail. Either you take a ductile material or you take a brittle material into consideration, right? If the factor of safety is less than this range, then the matter will not be durable, and if it is more than this range, then the beam will become, or the design will become, uneconomical. Okay, so that's all from today's lecture, right? We'll see the next part tomorrow. Okay, till then, bye bye, goodbye, thank you. And one more thing, if you like the video, right, if you understood the video, please look at this referral. More you refer to this part, the more we will be enthusiastic to share more number of concepts. You can log in to our Unacademy Plus subscription with my code, and with this code of BHAR10, my name is Abhishek Bhartiya, BHAR10, you can get 10% on the Unacademy Plus subscription, right? Please subscribe to our channel Unacademy Civil, right, so that you can get more amount of content. Thank you, and please like this video.